Hello everyone and welcome back to day 13 of blindfold chess training. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be going through opening puzzles. So what this is I say this every time and I don't know why I say two ises. I don't know if that and what this is maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Who cares? What it is there is essentially moves I read out from an app I have. It's called blindfold chess training, and we're going to be going through those moves from the start of the game till the end of the game. The last position that we leave off at will have a puzzle that we have to solve. So we have to keep track of the game in our minds, and then in the end also solve a puzzle. So by the end of it, I'm going to ask you where every piece is on the board currently, and also what the solution is to the puzzle. So it's twofold. Now, we're going to start with the first one, and we've done this a few times before, but this time we're going to level it up a little bit, the difficulty. So we'll start with the first one nice and easy, and we'll play it out on the board after. So let's go. So for the first one, we're going to go through 9 moves per side. Now, the openings may not be regular, they may be irregular, but we'll have to go and play it. So this one will be white to play. We'll be looking from white's perspective, as we usually do. And let's begin. Okay, time to close the eyes. Okay, the first move is b3. Where white, we play b3. Now ask yourself, if you're new to this, which diagonals does b3 open for the white pieces? Now you should be able to see that, okay, b3, typically we fee and kettle our bishop when we play b3, so the bishop can go on b2 or it can go on a3. That is our dark squared bishop, because b2 and a3 are dark squares. Now the opponent responds with the move d5. d5, ask yourself what that opens up. I can see now the queen can go to d6, d7, and the opponent's bishop can go to d7, e6, f5, g4, h3. Okay. Now we play the move bishop b2, very regular. The opponent responds with e6. Now ask yourself how e6 has changed the position. And by the way, you can pause the video at any point if you want to slow it down. I'm going a bit fast. So e6, the opponent can play, they can move their bishop from f8 to e7 to d6 to c5 to b4 to a3. So a3, they don't want to move the bishop to a3 because you'll take it with the bishop or the knight. And their other bishop has been blocked off now. Now we play the move c4. So c4 is the move we play, and good point to ask yourself what's happening in the position. I can see that c4 attacks the pawn on d5, and now there's tension between the armies. So there's tension between c4 and d5. So ask yourself, if they take our pawn on c4, how would we respond there? We could take back, b takes c4. That's definitely a possibility. But let's see what they play. So we play c4. Now the opponent plays knight to f6. So very standard, developing their pieces. So white has one piece developed, black has one piece developed. Nothing too special. Now, oh wait a second. Yeah, they play knight f6. Yeah, and now we play knight f3. So our move is knight to f3. Now, black has 2 pieces developed, white still has 1 piece developed. The pawns that have moved are c5 and b6, and for black, d5 and e6. Now the opponent, black, plays bishop to d6. Now they've also developed another piece as usual, as per normal. Bishop d6 puts the bishop on a nice diagonal. So you have to pause the video and ask yourself, what squares does that bishop control? Okay, well done if you said bishop on d6 controls e5, f4, g3, and h2. And also it controls c7, even though there's a pawn on c7. And yeah, so far so good. Now also, to get a better visualization of this position, what I like to do is ask myself where the pieces can move. So for example, the white knight on f3, where can that move to? And if it can move to a certain square, is that square being controlled by an enemy? So what I see straight away, I can play knight h4 pretty comfortably because the knight on f6 is blocking the queen on d8. I can also play knight to g5 comfortably. Can I play knight to e5 comfortably? Now, I don't think so because there's a bishop on d6, but we also have a bishop on b2. So a bishop on b2 might defend our knight on e5. Can we play knight d4? It looks like to me we could. Where else could we bring the knight? We can't bring the knight back to d2 because our pawn on d2 hasn't moved. We can bring the knight back to g8, but we can bring the knight back to g1, but why would we do that? That would be a terrible move, and no one would play that move. So after bishop d6, we play the move e3. Now e3 has a pretty logical follow-up. The follow-up would be d4, or bring the bishop to e2, or playing d4 then bring the bishop to d3. So we have a very solid setup. Knight is on f3, bishop's on b2, the opponent's bishop's on d6, knight's on f6. Now, if you're having trouble visualizing this position, ask yourself where all the pieces are. Now you might say, wait a second, he just said if I'm having trouble visualizing. Remember, ask yourself where all the pieces are. The point was I don't know where all the pieces are, but you do know. And the reason you know is you can replay the video for one, and for two, you just have to think about what is moved. Like even I right now, when I'm closing my eyes, I don't see like a magical board. Like I wish I did, but that's not how blindfold chess works. You get like a faint image in your head. Okay, I know roughly where all the pieces are. I know roughly how they connect. And that's the basis of it. So you really have to think hard. So, okay. Next move, the opponent plays castle. So they've brought their knight to f6, they've brought their bishop to d6, now they castle. Now, our move is bishop e2. So now, ask yourself how many pieces do we have developed? We have a bishop on e2, a knight on f3, a bishop on b2. Pawn structure is looking pretty nice. e3, c4, b3. The opponent's pawn structure, how is that looking? d5, e6, bishop d6. Yeah, I think just d5 and e6 have been played by the opponent. Knight f6, bishop d6. And I believe that's about it. Unless I'm missing something, but I don't think so. Yep, that's correct. And they've castled their king. So they've just castled their king. Now we play the move. Yeah, we played the move bishop e2. And they played c6 now. So they've added another pawn into the position. And c6 is a very typical move. So our opponent has a weird type of setup where they have a bishop on d6. A bishop on d6 and knight on f6. c6, e5, c6, d5, and then e6. And their bishop on c8 is still locked in. So I don't really like their setup. And I think it's going to be very easily punished. So we play the move castle. Makes sense. We need to get the king to safety. And they play the move b6. b6 makes a lot of sense because they're trying to get the bishop out from c8. But in this type of a position, I don't like the move b6. And the reason is, ask yourself now in your head, where can the bishop go from c8? Okay, it can go to b7. But okay, on b7, what does it do? Well, it's kind of staring at the pawn on d5, but they can take it, so it makes sense. It makes some sense. So if I was white, I would consider taking on d5 to fix that pawn structure. So this is a good time to take stock of the position, try and recall every piece. So I'm going to do that in a second, so pause the video. Okay, so every piece I remember so far, we have castled. Our pawn structure on the king side is intact, so h2, g2, f2, rook f1, king g1. We've played the move e3, d2 is still being played, c4, b3, a2. Rook is on a1, queen is on d1, rook is on f1, bishop on b2, knight on f3, bishop on e2. So bishop's e2, e2, b2, and e2, b2, rtd2. I don't know what I just said. And the knight is on. Where is that knight? I think the knight is still on b1. This is something I'm recalling, but I believe the knight is on b1. The other knight is on b1. So we haven't developed that piece. Now for the opponent, they have castled as well. Their kingside pawn structure is intact. The rook f8, king g8. They've played the moves e6, d5, c6, b6 now. So they played b6. And that's actually why I thought that was weird. I did miss something actually. So b6, a7, rook a8, bishop c8, knight b8, knight f6, bishop d6, queen d8, rook f8. Yeah, that's it. So I did actually miss something, so it's good always to say the pieces again. I forgot c6 was played in my mind, so when I said b6, in my mind I knew it was some inaccuracy because it didn't make sense, but I actually didn't see the move c6 was played. So in my mind it was still on c7, but with c6 played, b6 makes less sense, because if you put the bishop on b7, now you're staring at c6 pawn and a d5 pawn. And I'll show you after the game what I mean, but I think you guys can see that as well. So in terms of development, white's doing much better. Yeah, they maybe have a threat of putting the bishop to a6, trying to trade off our bishop because their knight's still on b8. But the pawn is on c4, so there's no connection there. Okay, let's go. Let's keep going with the game. Now we play the move queen c2. Okay, queen c2. Looking like a good move. The d pawn still hasn't moved. Queen c2, potentially we have checkmate ideas with knight g5 and queen h7. Of course the knight's on f6, but always keep this stuff in your mind. Queen c2, what else do I see with queen c2? It controls the entire diagonal. So b1, c2, d3, e4, f5, g6, h7. Where else could the queen go? It can go back to d1, it can go to c1, it can go to b1. So yeah. Now the opponent plays bishop to b7. So bishop b7, terrible move. I don't need to explain this one as much. Pawn is on c6 and d5, so don't put your bishop in a passive square. Maybe a better move is bishop a6, but even then, black's position is looking quite passive. Now we play the move knight g5, which I also don't like too much, because knight g5 in this position, you haven't finished your development with your knight on b1. The knight on b1 hasn't moved. But okay, knight g5 is played. And here they play the move h6. Now, and here we have to find the tactic. So now I would ask you to tell me where every single piece is. Take your time. It will take some time, and try and solve the solution. Honestly, I still haven't solved it because queen h7 doesn't work because knight takes. So let me go through all the pieces first, and then we'll try and figure out the solution. So white still has the pawn on h2, g2, f2, e3, d2, d4. Oh, I didn't say c4, b3, a2, rook a1, queen c2, rook f1, king g1, bishop b2, bishop e2, knight b1, knight g5. That's the black pieces. Aha, okay, I see the solution now. So I went through the pieces. We'll go through the black pieces as well. So they have h7, g7, f7, king g8, rook f8, e6, d5, c6, b6, a7, queen d8, rook a8, bishop e7, bishop d6, knight b8, knight f6. Now straight away I see d4 hasn't been played. Now typically you think, okay, there's a pawn on d4, so the bishop on b2 can't see the knight on f6. But straight away here I see that I can play the move bishop takes f6, which I believe is the solution, attacking the knight. If they take back with the pawn, I will simply have queen h7 checkmate. And if they take back with the queen, similarly queen h7 is checkmate. And if they take the knight on g5 instead, I will play bishop takes d8 and win the queen. So I believe that's the solution. We'll go through the game now and just making sure that's the solution. Yep, it is the solution. So let's go through the game. Oh, it's so much better to have your eyes open than closed. Imagine you were actually blind. You just wouldn't see anything except the chessboard if you've done enough training. Okay, we started with b3. The opponent played the move d5. We played the move bishop to b2. They played e6. We played c4. Knight f6. So here, if you didn't get that position from before, this will be a good for you to look at. So e6, c4, knight f6, knight f3, bishop d6, e3. Here they castled, I remember. No. Oh, they did castle. Yeah, e3, castle, bishop e2, c6, and immediately this capture is always on, so we always look out for it. Now we played the move castle. They played b6. I think this is quite a dubious move, and actually this game has been played before. Wow, b6 is the top move. But is bishop b7? Bishop b7 can't be the top move, right? Okay, queen c2. Bishop b7 is the top move. I assume the idea is taking and playing c5 eventually, or playing c5 on the next move. It makes a bit of sense. Actually, I gave it too less of credit. We played knight g5, which is not a great move either. If I was the opponent, simply finish development. But this is a massive blunder. h6 is a blunder. Now bishop f6 is winning, because if you take the knight, as I said, we take the queen, and if they take the bishop, we give a checkmate. So the game is simply over. Okay, good job on that one. Now let's move on to the next game. Let's go. So these are pretty quick ones. I'm gonna up the ante for this one. Oh, it only goes up to level 10. Okay, that's fine. Let's go. So here we're going to be playing as black, so it's going to be slightly harder, but still keep the position in your mind. Okay, let's go. Let's start. Got this game and probably one more, and then we'll call it there. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing some legitimate training. Some legit training. You guys will see, but yeah. Okay, let's start the game. We play the move f4. The opponent, oh, I guess not we play the move. Let's say the opponent plays the move f4. We respond with e5, because we always want to be on the winning side. So we play e5. You can visualize this from black or white's perspective. I like to do it from white, but you can simply do it from blacks as well. e5. You know the problem? Okay, quick rant, I'm going to go on. The problem here is it's pretty hot. I can't turn the fan on because then the mic picks it up. So I don't know what to do. You know what? Let's keep going. f4, e5. Now the opponent plays f takes e5. So they take the pawn we gave them. I don't know why we gave them a pawn, but we did. Now we play the move d6. So we're giving them another pawn. This is actually quite a common opening. I think it's called the From's Gambit, if I want to say. And it's actually pretty sound for black. So if you don't already know, this is a good opening against the wing, the f4 opening. So f4 and then e5. So they play f takes e5, we play d6. Now, they play e takes d6, we play bishop d6. And just giving you a word of advice, so normally these tactics revolve around that weak diagonal. So for example, let's say they played let's say they played a random move here, knight f6, it would already be checkmate. Not knight f6, my bad, not knight f6, knight c6. If they played, no, not knight c6, knight c3. I'm messing up my squares, my bad. If they play knight c3 here, we would play queen h5, g3, bishop g3, hg3, queen g3 is mate. So they have to do something. Now they play the move knight f3. Knight f3 stops the checkmate. We play knight f6. Knight f6 is quite a good move. Yeah. Good move, develop peace and live life, as they say. Now, the opponent plays knight c3. So both sides have got the knights out. One knight out. So we've got the knight on f6, they've got knight c3, knight f3, we have the bishop on d6. Now, also important to note, what pawns have gone from the game? So if you're good at visualizing, you'll see white has lost an f pawn, whereas black has lost a d and an e pawn. So now, after knight c3, we play castle. So we've castled the king to safety. And the opponent has played e4. So now they've taken the full center. And let's see what we can do. So if you're having trouble visualizing this position, read out all the pieces in your head where everything is. So right now what I see, the castle formation is still intact. That castle formation is king g8, rook f8, pawn h7, g7, f7. There's a knight on f6, there's a bishop on d6, and the d and e files are open. For white, they have a pawn on e4, knight f3, knight c3. That's it. And a pawn is missing from f2. Okay. Now, after e4, we play the move rook to e8. Ask yourself why we're playing rook to e8. What does it accomplish exactly? I think simply we are attacking the pawn. So a move like d3 would be pretty much forced. Maybe something else is playable. They play the move d3. Yep. And here we play the move knight to g4. Knight g4, super strange move actually. I don't recommend you playing like this, but think about in your head what the point is of knight g4. Myself personally, I don't see it. The only way knight g4 can ever be good is if you can get the queen on h5. h4. If you're going to get the queen on h4, check the king. Or I guess, no, even that's not anything. Yeah, I guess knight g4 has some sense, maybe. Because there's a bishop on d6. So ask yourself, where does the bishop on d6 control? It controls e5, f4, g3, h2. So potentially there's an attack on h2. Also, that diagonal is always weak, the one where the f-pawn is missing. So if you ever play a move like h3, it would be a big blunder. You would have a move there. They play bishop e2. And here we play the surprising move, knight takes h2. And I say it's surprising because to the naked eye, it looks like, okay, rook takes. But there is a tactic here. So let's see what happens. Knight takes h2. So they play knight takes h2. So if you visualize now, there's a knight on h2, there's a rook on h1, pawn still on g3, g2. Our bishop's on d6. So our bishop does hit the knight. So if you visualize d6, e5, f4, g3, h2, the bishop is hitting the knight. Now they've played d3, they've played e4, and all their other pieces are pretty much stationary. They have a knight on c3. But we do have an open e-file. So here we play the move bishop to g3 check. Now this check is pretty devastating. And they play the move king to f1. Now here we have a win. So we have to try and figure out this one. So it is black to play and win in this position. First, say all the pieces, where every piece is, and then you solve the puzzle. Okay, I will start with the black pieces. Black has a bishop on g3. They have pawns h7, g7, f7, c7, b7, a7, king g8, rook e8, queen d8, bishop c8, knight b8, rook a8. So it's pretty easy to remember. Now white, on the other hand, has a rook on h1, knight h2, pawn g2, e4, d3, c2, b2, a2, rook a1, knight c3, bishop c1, queen d1, and king f1. So I believe that's all. Oh, bishop e2. My bad, I forgot the bishop on e2. Now we have to try and win the game. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't actually see the solution here. Queen f6, they go bishop f3. Oh, I just saw the solution. Wow. So this is how breakthroughs happen in your mind. But I think I've seen it now. No, but that doesn't work, does it? I was thinking something like queen f6. Oh, wait, forget about queen f6 for a second. I know the diagonal that's been weakened is the b6, c5, d4, e3, f2, g1 diagonal. So I'm trying to set up a checkmate where I have a queen on d4 and the queen lands on f2, and that would be checkmate. The problem is if I put the queen on d4 right away. Oh wait, that looks amazing actually. Because, okay, if the queen goes on d4 right away, normally their queen can block, but in this case, if they go queen... Okay, if they go queen e1, we would take it with the bishop on g3. And the queen is blocked off by the bishop on e2. Now the knight on c3 can't contribute because it can't come to e2. Even if it did come to e2, it wouldn't do anything. The knight can't go back to d1 to defend f2 because the queen's on d1. And if I go queen d4, the king is trapped. I guess the king has one move. King f2. No. Can't go king. What am I saying? King f2. No, king f2 is not possible. The queen's on d4. Yeah, the king is looking trapped to me. There is no knight move they can do to stop it. Oh, there is one knight move actually. Knight h2 to g4. Wow. But then just bishop takes g4. Because our bishop looks at that square. Yeah, it's winning. It's completely winning. Queen d4, I believe, is the move. Let me have a look. Yes, got it. Knight g4, bishop g4. Yeah, I was right. Okay, let's have a look at this game. This was hard to do. Even I struggled a little bit with the solution. Until I didn't. Okay. f4. So if you don't already know, this move is pretty cool. It's actually quite equal. And if you take, what's it called? From's Gambit. Yeah, I was right. Take d6. And now when they take back, oh, let me sit up. I'm probably out of frame. d6. Now, when they take, we take with the bishop. And what I was demonstrating before, if they play a move like knight c3, this is mate. This is mate. Actually, you can sack the queen here. Very nice. So they don't do that. They don't lose. Knight f6. This is very typical. Here they played knight c3. We castled. They played e4. We played rook e8. Very standard. d3. Everything very standard so far. This move is a bit out of order, but it had a pretty good point. And the point was knight here was threatened. And actually bishop e2 just simply a blunder, I believe. Yeah, knight takes h2. And after knight takes, if rook took, we probably could have taken knight takes and played queen h4, I believe. I think that's the solution there. Yeah. This is good. So they took with the knight. And here bishop g3 is just amazing. Because bishop g3, king f1, this queen d4 move comes out of nowhere. But the way I saw it, I'll break it down. Originally, I was looking at queen f6. And as you know, I was saying I can't see a solution there. The reason is I thought bishop f3, queen b6. And here I thought, okay, they have so many ways to block it. At the very least, queen e2. But even better, maybe this move, d4. But then I realized, wait a second. Let me not allow d4. And let me not allow the queen to come to e2. So that's how I stumbled upon the move queen d4. I saw the bishop was here controlling the dark squares. I know d4 is a dark square. Back to episode 2 or 1. These are all dark squares. Here you simply can't avoid this checkmate. Now knight g4 I believe is the only move. Oh, there is queen e1, give up the queen, but it's not a serious attempt. Knight g4, if you play it, I just take it and it does nothing. So knight g4, take it, and you've done nothing. You still have to give up the queen. GG. Alright, let's move on to the last and final game of today. And we will be the black pieces. And let's play a pretty normal opening. I say normal opening, this one is chaotic. But this is the one that we'll learn the most from. So let's do it. Last but not least, let's go. Okay, we're playing black. And the opponent starts with e4. We played the move, very calm and collected. Do you guys want to guess what it is? There's only 20 moves to guess from. So after e4 we play g5. Because, you know, YOLO. And you're going to have to keep track of this. And it's actually harder to keep track of these positions because it's very chaotic. But you know what? This is what you signed up for. You're watching this. If you're watching this far into the video, you are going to make it till the end. So I can say pretty much what I want. You will probably make it till the end. So you know what? It is what it is. So e4 we play g5. So you have to live with it. Okay, next is d4. So after e4, g5, d4, now we play the move bishop to g7. I actually don't know what this opening is called because I never play these like garbage openings. But I know it's called, is it called a Norwegian rat? It might be, or something similar to that. I don't know. But yeah, we play g4. Now, after playing the move g5, so after e4, g5, d4, that pawn is under attack. But we don't care. We play the move bishop g7. Now, the reason they don't take, I'm actually not exactly sure. Yeah, because it does look like a free pawn, right? I'm trying to think. e4, g5, d4, bishop e7. I believe you can take. I believe it is one main line to take. But they don't take in this game. They trust us. After bishop e7, they play the move bishop c4. And we play the move h6. So far, they're following all the chess principles and we're breaking all the chess principles. They played e4, d4, bishop c4. We've played h6, g5, bishop e7. At least our pawn is not hanging. Now they play the move knight to c3. And we play c6. So we're continuing to, you know, play absolute bad chess, but it is what it is. I guess we're preparing d5 with this. c6 also opens up the queen to go d8 to a5. After knight c3, c6, they play e5. Now e5, okay, I don't like the move e5 because you just develop your pieces. White is going to be much better. But okay, e5 blocks in the bishop. I guess it blocks in the bishop from g7. But black can always play d6 whenever they like. Yeah, I don't like e5. After e5, we play the move d5. A very common move. Now, ask yourself what d5 does. Now, d5 attacks the bishop on c4. That bishop will be forced to retreat unless they play the move en passant, which is forced. No, it's not forced. d5, they play bishop d3. Logical. And we play the move c5. I don't like how either side is playing, but it's chaotic. So far, we have pawns on g5, h6, c5, d5. And they have a bishop on d3, knight on c3, d4, e5. What a strange position. Now they play the move bishop to b5 check. They say, I've had enough of your random moves. I play bishop b5 check. Now we're gonna have to block this check somehow. After bishop b5 check, we play knight c6. Okay. So far, knight on c6, bishop on b7. Are the developed pieces for us? They have 3 developed pieces. We have 2. They play dc5. So they take on c5. They say, oh, that's a free pawn. Let me take it. But in the process, they've weakened the pawn on e5. So now we play the move bishop takes e5. Oh, I can already see the solution. Like I can see, I know where this is heading. Yeah, they play queen takes d5. And here you really have to visualize what's attacked and what's not. And here I think it's very obvious. This is going to be very obvious for you. We play the move bishop takes c3 check. They play b takes c3. And here it's black to play and win. Good job if you got it. It's queen takes d5 and the queen is simply free. That's a free queen. Now, how did we get there? Let's go. And if you did this, it was a pretty easy day. I thought it would be harder. It's actually pretty easy. Tomorrow we're going to be doing some harder stuff with the games. And yeah, really trying to push our limits. But this one, I think is pretty doable. e4, g5. After d4, bishop g7. Now I believe taking is a move. Yeah, bishop g5 is the main line. Had a feeling. But no, bishop c4 they chose. After h6, knight c3, we played c6. Here I hated the move e5. I think e5 is a terrible move, but okay, they played it. We played d5. Bishop comes back to d3. And here c5 is quite nice. The point is we're breaking up the structure, and the tactic that happened in the game was after bishop b5 check, knight c3. They took, and this is simply a mistake. We can take here, and they should have brought the knight out, but they simply blundered with queen takes d5, because this is a simple tactic. Knight hangs and then queen hangs. Knight hangs, we check, they take, and we take the queen. So that's going to do us for day 13 of blindfold chess training. A bit easier than the previous days, and probably, yeah, easier than days to come, but definitely a good way to visualize, good way to solve some puzzles and visualize the opening. Okay, see you all tomorrow.